We didn't do this, right?
No.
All right, good. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's look at the sinuses. A sinus is a cavity in the skull that moisturizes air. Okay. Here we have the frontal sinus. This is the frontal sinus, and this is the frontal sinus. Okay. Those are frontal sinuses. This is the ethmoid sinus. And here we have the maxillary sinus. Those are three sinuses that will moisturize air that you inhale. Okay. All right, let's look at the nasal cavity. All right. The boundaries of the nasal cavity are the external nares. External nares are the nostrils right here. External nares, which is 400 here. Okay. External nares. The air enters the external nares and enters the vestibule. This is the space called the vestibule. And then it enters the nasal concha. There are three pairs of nasal concha. Nasal concha have two functions. Number one, they will filter the air. The nasal concha are covered by a mucous membrane, and the mucous membrane will secrete mucus that will entrap part of the debris that you inhale. Number two, they warm the air. The nasal concha sends the air into a spin or into a turbulence, and the spinning of the air warms the air. Those are the two functions of the nasal concha. In between the nasal concha, you have these grooves. These grooves here are called meatus. M-E-A-T-U-S-E-S. Meatus. Okay?
Does that have a number? Or just the grooves?
Yeah, I guess 406 and 409. Those would be the meatus, the grooves between the concha. At the back of the nasal concha will be the internal nares. All right, so the boundary of the nasal cavity will be between the external nares and the internal nares.
Can you point to the internal nares?
Right here at the back.
Okay.
The back of the nasal concha, the internal nares. Okay. The nasal concha then leads to the nasal pharynx. The nasal pharynx is here. Okay. The nasal pharynx is found between the internal nares and the soft palate. That's the soft palate. Okay. In the nasal pharynx, there are two structures that you should know. Number one, you will have the pharyngeal tonsil on the back wall of the nasal pharynx. Okay. Pharyngeal tonsil. Pharyngeal tonsil is also called the adenoid, right here. Adenoid, A-D-E-N-O-I-D. Also in the nasal pharynx, you'll have the opening to the eustachian tube. Eustachian tube is E-U-S-T-A-C-H-I-O-N. E-U-S-T-A-C-H-I-O-N.
Professor, can you point to it again?
This is the opening here. Okay. Okay. Another term for eustachian tube will be the pharyngotympanic tube. Pharyngotympanic tube. Let me write this down for Okay, pharyngotympanic. Or eustachian tube. All right, now the eustachian tube leads from the nasal pharynx to the middle ear, and in infants and toddlers, that tube is very short. So whenever the infant or toddler gets a common cold, the common cold virus will move from the nasal pharynx to the middle ear and will cause ear infection, and that ear infection is called otitis media. Otitis media. Okay? Inflammation of the middle ear. All right? Now, how does a 1-year-old who cannot speak yet tell you that he has an ear infection? Well, he pulls on his ear. Pulling on his ear gives him a little relief, okay? So that needs to be treated, okay? Don't treat that at home. Don't put sweet oil and, you know, all sorts of things that I've heard parents do. Take him to see a pediatrician, because if that's untreated, that can lead to hearing loss. So you don't want your child eventually having to wear a hearing aid. Okay? Okay. All right. The nasal pharynx then leads to the oral pharynx. The oral pharynx is the mouth. Okay. All right. So here's the oral pharynx here. In the oral pharynx, there are 2 other tonsils. You have the palatine tonsil here, which is the back wall of the mouth. And then there's another tonsil at the back of the tongue, but the tongue is removed here, so you don't see that. And that would be the lingual tonsil, okay?
Where's the palatine tonsil?
Right here, the back wall of the oral cavity, okay? What is a tonsil, Paul? What is a tonsil?
Sure.
What is a tonsil?
I'm not sure.
Well, we mentioned that before.
It's a growth at the back of the mouth.
It's a what?
A growth. That's
A growth. Oh, a growth. Michael, what's a tonsil?
I'm not sure.
We talked about this. What is this? We didn't talk about tonsils? All right, tonsils are lymph nodes. Lymph nodes, okay? Lymph nodes are a major part of our immune system. Okay?
What did you say the tonsil that's under the tongue, or by the tongue is called?
It's at the back of the tongue, lingual. Okay. Now here, this is the submandibular salivary gland, which is located in the floor of the mouth. Submandibular salivary gland. Okay? So you'll know what that is. All right. Leaving the oral pharynx, the boundary of the oral pharynx will be the soft palate and the base of the tongue. All right, we leave the oral pharynx and we enter the laryngopharynx. The laryngopharynx leads to both the esophagus behind the trachea and the larynx. This will be the esophagus and this will be the larynx in this area. Okay. In the larynx, you will have the glottis. The glottis is the airway. This is the glottis here. Queenie, are you able to see me?
Yes.
Because you know I'm calling you.
Oh man.
Okay. Then on each side of the glottis, you will have the vocal cords. So 416 and 417 will be the vocal cords. When the vocal cords are stimulated by air, what do we call that?
Phonation.
Phonation is production of sound. Okay, good. All right. Now, remember I said that the trachea is protected by tracheal cartilages. The tracheal cartilages are C-rings, meaning that they have no cartilage in the back, just on the side. So they look like this. They look like this. Okay? In the back, however, there's a muscle, and this muscle is called the trachealis. Okay? All right, so here, this would be the trachealis muscle. Right here. That's the trachealis muscle. Okay. This is the epiglottis. The epiglottis folds over the glottis when you're drinking and eating to prevent food and liquids from entering the airway. Okay?
Can you say it again?
Epiglottis closes over the glottis to prevent water and food from entering the glottis. The glottis is only designed for air. Okay? When anything else enters the glottis besides air, we call that what? Aspiration. Aspiration. Very good. Okay. Leading from the larynx is the trachea. Okay? Now, there is hyaline cartilage that protects the trachea. As I said, you have the tracheal cartilages. Now, the larynx is also covered by a cartilage, and this is the thyroid cartilage. And in the back, you have the cricoid cartilage. This is thyroid cartilage, THYROID, 420. And in the back, 421 would be the cricoid cartilage, CRICOID. Cricoid cartilage is here. Okay. Any questions? Who wants to be first?